Homo Deus by Yuval Harari. The book is about how humans are changing the world and how we can become God or Deus. Harari argues that we are successful in defeating century-old problems like wars and famines. However, we will likely face other unknown problems due to advancements in science and technology. He also discusses the impact of our dominance on other species and how this affects our evolutionary success. The New Human Agenda. In the early 21st century, famine, plague, and war are less common than in previous centuries. This is because humanity has learned to prevent these problems. For example, in the early 21st century, more people die from eating too much than from eating too little, more people die from old age than from infectious diseases, and more people commit suicide than are killed by soldiers, terrorists, and criminals combined. Famine was a problem that plagued humanity for thousands of years. In the past, famines were often caused by natural disasters like floods or droughts. However, in recent years technological advances have made it nearly impossible for people to starve to death. For example, for the first time in its recorded history, China is now free from famine. If there is a famine in one part of the world, people in other parts of the world can usually buy food on the open market and avoid getting food shortages. Mass famines are still a problem from time to time, but they are usually caused by human politics, not by natural disasters. In the Middle Ages, people lived in cities with a high chance of getting sick and dying. Diseases such as the Black Death were spread by fleas and rats and were difficult to prevent or cure. In the late 1800s, humans became more susceptible to epidemics due to a combination of growing populations and better transportation. However, in the last few decades, global child mortality has decreased and we have been able to fight off epidemics with vaccinations, antibiotics, and better medical infrastructure. For example, the smallpox vaccine was so successful that in 1979 the World Health Organization declared it had been eradicated, and in 2014 not a single person was either infected or killed by smallpox. AIDS was a difficult epidemic to understand and treat due to its deviousness, but after the medical community became aware of it, new medicines turned AIDS into a chronic condition and higher chances of survival. Since the end of World War II, wars have become less common. Wars used to happen frequently, but now they happen less and less often. Wars used to be caused by things like gold mines and oil wells, but now they're caused by things like computer software and mobile phones. The gods of planet Earth. Humanity has been successful in reducing the incidence of famine, plague, and war in the past, but this does not mean that these problems are no longer a concern. The goal of the 21st century will be to protect humankind and the planet from the dangers inherent in our own power and to achieve other goals that are yet to be determined. We need to upgrade humans into gods, and turn Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. Humans are trying to become gods by upgrading themselves into having divine qualities. This can be done through either biological engineering, rewriting the genetic code of a human body, cyborg engineering, merging an organic body with non-organic devices, or the engineering of non-organic beings. Bioengineering is the most conservative of these options, while cyborg engineering is the most radical. Neural networks will be replaced by intelligent software, which will be able to surf both the virtual and non-virtual worlds, free from the limitations of organic chemistry. The author discusses how it is difficult to predict the future, specifically how new technologies will impact human beings. He goes on to say that one thing that will definitely change with the introduction of new technologies is that humans will become gods. This change is because, with the ability to re-engineer their own minds, humans will be able to achieve abilities that were once considered divine. Humans are afraid of becoming irrelevant in a world where superhumans exist. We fear that our dreams and identity will be irrelevant in a world where we can genetically engineer babies and create artificial intelligence. Experts agree that the world will change beyond recognition in this century, but they do not know when the brakes will be hit. The author predicts that if we focus on trying to achieve immortality, bliss, and divinity, we will likely fail, as this is something that has been attempted in the past and has not always been successful. Instead, the author suggests that we should focus on trying to improve the living conditions of the majority of people and work towards a more just and peaceful society. While human knowledge has increased at a rapid pace in the past, this has led to greater changes in the present and future. For instance, while it was once easy to predict how Europe would look in 1050, it is now much harder to do so. Additionally, while it is sometimes useful to try to repeat the successes of our ancestors, this is not always possible or wise. Ultimately, the goal of studying history is to help us escape from the grip of the past and to envision possible futures that we would not have otherwise considered. Human dominance over other animals. Humans have always been thought of as the gods of the earth because we have dominion over other animals and have caused many ecological disasters. Our technology and our domesticated animals have caused the loss of many animals in the world. People fear that today we are again in mortal danger of massive volcanic eruptions or colliding asteroids, but in reality, the danger is slim. Mass extinctions occur once every many million years, and a big asteroid will probably hit our planet sometime in the next 100 million years, but it is very unlikely to happen next Tuesday. Instead of fearing asteroids, we should fear ourselves because Homo sapiens has rewritten the rules of the game and we have the potential to do far more damage than any other organism has ever done. Animal needs and human desires have shaped the living conditions of farm animals for thousands of years. Theoretically, this should have protected the animals from cruelty, but in reality, humans can cause tremendous suffering to farm animals. The root of the problem is that domesticated animals have inherited many needs that are redundant on human farms. Farmers routinely ignore these needs, without paying any economic penalty. They lock animals in tiny cages, mutilate their horns and tails, separate mothers from offspring, and selectively breed monstrosities. The animals suffer greatly, yet they live on and reproduce. This contradicts the most basic principles of natural selection. The agricultural revolution was when farmers began to use domesticated animals to do their work instead of hunter-gatherers. They justified their behavior by saying that they were exploiting the animals and subjugating them to human desires and whims, and that the theist religions, such as biblical Judaism, justified the agricultural economy through new cosmological myths. The gods were given two related roles to play. First, they explained what is so special about sapiens and why humans should dominate and exploit all other organisms. Secondly, according to Christianity, God gave an eternal soul only to humans, so humans became the apex of creation. Animals were pushed to the sidelines. The rise of modern science and industry has led to the next revolution in human-animal relations, the silencing of animals and plants and the focus on man as the only player on the stage. This led to humans becoming more powerful and without any obligations. The scientific revolution was when humans learned how to use science and technology to improve their lives. Humanist religions were founded because humans were no longer worshipping gods, but instead worshipping humans. These religions believe that humans have some special essence that is the source of all meaning and authority in the universe. Industrial farming was created because it is easier to pack animals into pens and cages than it is to let them run free. With the help of science and technology, humans can produce meat, milk, and eggs more efficiently than ever before. While some people are beginning to question the ethics of industrial farming, humans still have the power to exploit and kill pigs more efficiently than any other creature. Science and religion. People think that humans evolved from earlier life forms, but the majority of people believe that God created humans in their current form, just as the Bible says. Schools do a poor job teaching evolution, but religious zealots demand that children also be taught the theory of intelligent design, which holds that all organisms were created by the design of some higher intelligence, aka God. The theory of evolution is opposed by some people because it denies the existence of souls. Supporters of the theory of evolution argue that it is a scientific theory and that it is based on the principle of the survival of the fittest. Scientists don't know how electric brain signals create subjective experiences, and they don't know what evolutionary benefit could be associated with this phenomenon. Even more crucially, they don't know what happens in the mind that doesn't happen in the brain. The mind is a complex network of electric signals that pass between different parts of the body, including the brain, but scientists don't know where or how the mind intervenes in these signals. The history of science is replete with abandoned concepts and theories. For instance, early modern scientists who tried to account for the movement of light postulated the existence of a substance called ether, which supposedly fills the entire universe. However, scientists failed to find any empirical evidence for the existence of ether, whereas they did come up with alternative and better theories of light. Consequently, they threw ether into the dustbin of science. The same fate has befallen the soul. For thousands of years, people believe that all our actions and decisions emanate from our souls. Yet in the absence of any supporting evidence, and given the existence of much more detailed alternative theories, the life sciences have ditched the soul. Scientists used to think that brains and minds were like steam engines. They thought that the mind was just a machine that processed data the same way a steam engine does. However, today we know that there is more to the mind than just data processing. We can distinguish between conscious mental experiences and non-conscious brain activities. Scientists have been able to identify specific brain patterns that appear every time humans report that they are conscious. This has allowed them to determine whether a patient is conscious or not. However, even if a computer self-reports that it is conscious, we cannot be sure that it is really conscious. We are still stuck in a vicious circle where we start with the assumption that humans are always truthful and then use this assumption to infer that the computer is really conscious. We don't have a good answer yet for how to determine whether a computer is really conscious. Religion is a way of life that is founded on spiritual beliefs. People use religion to organize and cooperate. Religion is more than just a spiritual path. Religion tells you what to do and how to behave. Religion is a way of life that helps to regulate human behavior. Spiritual journeys are different than religious journeys. A spiritual journey is when you follow your curiosity and explore your imagination. Spiritual journeys can be unpredictable and lead you to different places. Dualism is a legacy from ancient, dualistic religions. Dualism believes in the existence of two gods, one good and one evil. Dualism teaches people to break free from the material shackles that hold them back from reaching their spiritual potential. Spiritual truths often challenge the conventional beliefs of dominant religions. The power of stories about money, gods, nations, and corporations. Our world contains three layers of reality: objective entities such as trees, rocks, and rivers, subjective experiences such as fear, joy, and desire, and stories about money, gods, nations, and corporations. In the Stone Age, these stories were small and local, but as sapiens started to cooperate on a massive scale, the gods' power grew. The agricultural revolution allowed sapiens to feed cities and armies, but the gods' power grew even more after they started to be employed by sapiens. The gods became real to the Sumerians and their power grew even more. Today, corporations are just as real as the gods, and sapiens can cooperate on a truly massive scale because there are powerful stories. With the invention of writing, stories could be more complex and longer than ever before. This allowed for ancient Egyptians, Elvis Presley, the European Union, and other societies to be more accurately documented and understood. The author talks about how writing facilitated the creation of powerful fictional entities such as gods, which then reshaped reality. These entities were also easier for humans to believe in because they became habituated to experiencing reality through symbols. Hunter-gatherers, farmers, and scribes had different daily realities, but the all-important administrators increasingly saw reality through written texts. For this literate elite, anything written on a piece of paper was at least as real as trees, oxen, and humans. Fictions allow for cooperation among people, but at a price. The same fictions determine the goals of the cooperation. This means that the systems may seem to be working well, but only if we adopt the system's own criteria for measuring success. For example, a Muslim mullah might say that their system is working, because there are now 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide. However, a school principal might say that their system is working, because, during the last 5 years, exam results have risen by 7.3%. These two examples illustrate how different yardsticks can lead to different conclusions about the success of a system. Modernity. Modernity is a term used to describe the ways of life that we live today. It is a complex system that regulates our lives and shapes our dreams. It is a system in which humans agree to give up meaning in exchange for power. Modernity is a system in which humans are not actors in any larger-than-life drama, and life has no script, no playwright, no director, no producer, and no meaning. On the practical level, modern life consists of the constant pursuit of power within a universe devoid of meaning. Modern culture is the most powerful in history, and it is plagued by more existential angst than any previous culture. The modern pursuit of power is fueled by the alliance between scientific progress and economic growth. For most of history, science progressed slowly while the economy was in a deep freeze. However, over time, people's growing trust in the future helped break the cycle of stagnation and allowed for economic growth to gather momentum. In the modern world, we are under constant pressure to do more. This pressure comes from both the individual and the collective levels. On the individual level, we feel constant pressure to make money and have a good life. On the collective level, the race manifests itself in ceaseless upheavals. Despite all our achievements, we feel constant pressure to do more. To try and prevent this pressure from becoming too much, modernity upholds growth as a supreme value. The modern world is a contract between humans and the universe, where humans agree to give up their belief in a great cosmic plan to gain power. Humanism is a revolutionary new creed that conquered the world during the last few centuries and believes that humans can create and define goodness, righteousness, and beauty based on their own experiences and feelings. God's role as the source of meaning and authority was not just a philosophical theory, it affected every facet of daily life. Today, humans can rely on their feelings and desires to determine what is good and bad, right and wrong, beautiful and ugly, without waiting for someone else to tell them. Do we really have freedom? In the early part of the 21st century, science has begun to undermine the foundations of the liberal order. The liberal order is based on the idea that humans have free will, and that the decisions of voters and customers are neither deterministic nor random. However, science has begun to show that decisions are not free, and that humans are not responsible for their actions. In 2016, the world is dominated by the liberal package of individualism, human rights, democracy, and the free market. However, science is undermining the foundations of the liberal order by showing that these concepts are not based on factual statements. For example, the idea that voters and customers are free is not based on a factual statement, but instead on an ethical judgment. Similarly, the idea that humans have free will is not based on a factual statement, but rather on a belief. In reality, we are manipulated by corporations, politicians, and religious institutes. Technology making your uniqueness obsolete. Liberals uphold democracy and free markets because they believe that every human is a uniquely valuable individual and that their free choices are the ultimate source of authority. In the 21st century, however, technological advancements may make this belief obsolete. For example, humans will lose their economic and military usefulness, hence the economic and political system will stop attaching much value to them. Additionally, the system will still find value in humans collectively, but not in unique individuals. Lastly, the system will still find value in some unique individuals, but these will be a new elite of upgraded superhumans rather than the mass of the population. End of the summary. Thanks for listening.